Soulless Dead, Chapter 7, Raining Bullets, Part 1. That girl's look in her eyes was a combination of fear, pain, and a big look of why. Tears were streaming down her eyes. That round was most likely an exploding round, and it took a large chunk out of her arm. She was bleeding really bad. One of our party, Jeff Krause, was always a good guy. He cared about people quite a bit. Big burly fellow. He started to run his way out to try to get her, and we had to grab him and pull him back. A bullet rang and hit the corner of the pillar where we were at, right where he was at. Apparently the sniper knew where we were at for sure, and at this point it wasn't good because we were starting to see more of them start to be more attracted to the area. We kept low, and the girl was of course still crying, asking us for help. Apparently that's how the sniper saw us at first, but when Jeff walked his way out trying to help her, that made matters even worse. It was like in those World War II movies where you have a sniper pinning someone down, kind of like Saving Private Ryan. When Vin Diesel's character was laying there bleeding to death, and the sniper was waiting for someone to come out, Vin Diesel was gasping, asking his fellow soldier, "Fish, come and get me, help me out," while he was bleeding and shaking. You could tell the guy was about to die, and there was nothing really they could do for him. It was unfortunate that we just watched the life seep right out of that girl's neck. Something I'll definitely never forget. There's something about looking into someone's eyes when you can see the lifeblood of them drain out of them. At first it's wide and open and bloodshot from the pain. Then the eyelids start to sag. That expression of intensity starts to sag a little more where her face was laying down to the concrete. Losing muscle strength and blood pressure will do that. Her voice went from frantic, squawky to lower and lower. As she bled out, she got quieter and quieter. Then the twitching set in. That was her body struggling to, stay alive. Then it got really quiet. And then she stopped moving altogether. Her eyes went from being alive to bleachy white. Expressionless. It's like looking into a shark's eyes. Just like in Jaws, there's nothing there anymore. It's almost like watching the soul being pulled from someone's body. As I sat there in the corner looking at her, still making eye contact to her lifeless body, it made me wonder, what did she do to deserve this? What did she do in her life? Did she have kids? Did she have a family? Stupid things would come through my head, like, did she like bacon? It's amazing how we start questioning, even to people we don't even know. What was their last meal? Did they have friends? Who is this man to her? Probably a husband, I wasn't sure, but you never know in these days. No one gets married anyway. But then again, I'm being judgmental. I sat there for a few seconds, and then another shot rang out. I barely missed one of our friend's foot, and it ricocheted off and got dirt everywhere. It shocked me back to real life. Then I saw that woman get up. The change had occurred, and she made her way up, and again another shot rang out. This guy was good. Scooped her head off right below the neck, right at the fatal T. The bullet entered through the back of the head and right through the front of the lip under the nose. Ripped her head right off. I know he's using Russian exploding rounds because, it did its job, to say the least. Whatever this guy did before, he definitely had a hobby with rifles. We had to come up with a plan, and things were getting frantic. This bullet storm had to stop, and if we were going to find somebody to help us, we had to make this worth it. One of the guys in our group had suggested that we try some sort of pincer move. You see, he was in the military, and he had been in a situation where someone was holding him down. Clearly not as skilled, but it was a Taliban sniper. Turned out it was just a little kid behind the rifle. But you give someone enough training with a gun, point and shoot. It's just easy as that. He said we had to come up with a distraction. Since I had the most body armor, I had to volunteer, which I wasn't excited for because my armor was ready to handle a 30-06 cartridge, but I wasn't excited about the bruising that it was going to be leaving later, possibly crack my ribs. He said that I would take my pistol and I would aim up at the building and fire. We knew exactly where he was, but we were too afraid to get out of there. The building wasn't too far away. It was less than a few seconds of a good run to get to the overhang where it would be safe from the sniper. As soon as I would get shot, I would make my way back over while Jeff would hold him down. Jeff had a nice M14 that he borrowed from my father. My father wasn't exactly able-bodied to be fighting with us or fast enough to do this, but he was definitely a good guard. But he gave Jeff our gun nonetheless. Jeff said he would hold him down while we make our way into the building. My first question is, if he did shoot me in the chest, would I live or would it go through? You never know with these armor plates. I've seen them fail to deploy what they're promising in the first place. But we had no choice. One of the men with us was named Orville. He was a local handyman in our church, and he had a K-bar and a piece of glass. And he grabbed it and took some chewing gum and stuck it together and looked out. We could see the man peeking over. Of course, with the gleam on the glass, he shot at it and blew the K-bar to smithereens. Broke the knife, which upset me quite a bit. It was a nice knife. We knew exactly where he was, and he was aiming right at us. And I wasn't excited about the next part. I put my armor mask on and my steel helmet that I had commandeered from a dead soldier we'd found up the road, and I ran out there. Of course, he clipped me right in the top of the chest, and it definitely hurt. First thing I noticed was a stinging noise. Ugh. That noise, that screech, that sound, the crack, the bullet hitting me. Luckily, it kind of deflected the way I was running. Most of it exploded and hit the ground, but it dropped me. It dropped me faster than a fly on cocaine. What a rush. Any bungee jumper that ever tells me that was the better thing, try getting shot with a round that could possibly kill you. There's no greater rush than that. I dropped immediately, and then I found refuge by the car where the dead couple was. I made my way towards the back of the bumper where he couldn't see me. The other two ran their way in and made their way under the overhang. I was excited to see that. The next part, he was aiming at me once again, firing at the car trying to get me through the metal. One of them whizzed by and nearly clipped me again, and last thing I want to do is get shot again. And then the pain started to set into my chest. It was my sternum. He cracked a couple of them. Cracked my ribs. It really hurt because every time I would breathe, it would burn quite a bit. So I've got a bullet wound and a graze, and now I have cracked ribs. What's next? Jeff started to yell at me to tell me to get moving. He pulled out the M14 and fired 6 rounds to the top of the building, and we saw the sniper duck. I ran my way and made my way over to the overhang, and long and short, I collapsed. It was no walk in the park. I briefly pulled off my vest to check and see, and sure enough, it was as black and blue as night. It was definitely very painful. The burning had stopped, and now the soreness and the pins and needles had started coming in, and it definitely was a lot worse. I would have taken the burning because it came in waves, because it was throbbing, but it was starting to swell quite a bit. It didn't affect my arm movement too much, but every time I would move it out, again, it would separate those bones, and it would feel like fire ants tunneling their way through my veins. I popped a Laura tab and told them we could keep moving. We started to make our way down to the stairwell where we could make our way to the roof. Right as we were coming through, I stopped both of them by putting my arm against their chest. They asked me what the hell I was doing, but I made them look down. There was a tripwire. Next to it was a soda can bomb. I'd seen one like that. It was filled with phosphorus and flash powder, and it was capable of blowing up. We disarmed it and cut the wire, and we noticed it was filled with nails. God forbid one of us got those in the legs or in the stomach. We'd never get them all out. We got really lucky. We walked our way up the stairs and kept making sure that we wouldn't walk into any more mines, and of course there were plenty of them up there. Even a claymore. There's nothing worse than seeing ball bearings coming at you at several thousand feet per second. We disengaged that one and put it in Orville's backpack and waited for later. We could hear gunshots as he started to fire at our friend Jeff. Luckily, we had some walkie-talkies we found at a Walmart we raided once. Stupid little Iron Man toy ones that worked nonetheless. He was telling us that he didn't know that we were there and that he wasn't too sure. He said to keep an eye out for motion sensors because somebody this skilled wouldn't exactly be going up there for no reason. Jeff said he kept him held down and that he was probably using a bolt action gun because his firing wasn't as consistent as the semi-automatic power of the M14. We made our way up the stairs a little more and we noticed that the door was locked. We didn't want to jiggle the thing too much to warn our sniper friend of the impending doom that he was about to come into. We were worried that the door was rigged with a tripwire and Orville had to look at it. We had noticed a lot of mines coming up that stairwell, and so we were afraid that that last door would have some. Of course, it was an inordinate amount of explosives in the first place. Maybe he was out, maybe he wasn't, but it was a risk we had to take. Orville took his shotgun and had the other guy stand by. I wasn't sure who he was. I'd never really met him. He was another drifter that we had picked up. He took his shotgun and blew the door hinges off, and we made sure that we got back. We then took a long pole that we had found down in the cellar and pushed the door open. A mine went off and exploded. Nails went everywhere and ricocheted. Luckily, we were far enough back to where it didn't hurt us. The sniper then turned around and fired at the door where we were at. A couple rounds ricocheted, but there wasn't much more he could have done. This is when things started to get a little hairy. This is when things got really bad. As we were sitting there and bullets were swinging by us, we just thought we should just poke our head up, and that's when we made a mistake. We waited too long. We heard a pin go, and then we heard a thunking noise, much like a grenade hitting the ground. It was making its way down the stairs. Orville was the first to run, and he grabbed me by the grab pull on my vest and pulled me down the second flight of stairs. We fell and landed on our sides, and luckily we didn't get too hurt, but the other guy wasn't so lucky. The explosion was deafening. It was like what you would think in a concrete stairwell. The explosion didn't have a lot of places to go. My ears were bleeding. Chalk it up to the pain lasagna that I had already been making between the bullet wounds, the cracked ribs, the concussions, and everything else that I now had. I even had a piece of shrapnel sticking out of my boot, and I got really lucky that it didn't cut anything off. Orville wasn't so lucky. He got peppered by some of the hot rock that was slung on his face. It burned him pretty bad, but he was okay. Another one of those grenades and we'd be dead. Part of the stairwell had been destroyed, and you could see the twisted rebar and the stairwell rails that were bent. The only thing we saw of our friend was a big red mist and a couple body parts and some chunks of flesh. Turned him into ground beef almost instantly. My guess is it was a standard pineapple grenade that shredded him. Between the smoke and the smell of burning, rotting flesh, well, I shouldn't say rotting, it was almost immediate, but the smell was horrible. I don't know how a cannibal can do it if we smelled that bad. Orville got up and loaded his shotgun and made his way up. Of course, when you get hit with a concussion like that from a blast, it knocks your cochlea out in your ear, and you can barely stand. I had trouble getting up. Bad time for that lower tab to start picking up again. I could start to feel it going too, which didn't help. Orville had me sit down and we waited. He had a shotgun pointing up the stairwell in case he tried to get in here again. We heard our M14 going off down there, and Jeff was clearly doing his job. But I don't think the sniper was paying too much mind to him since he was well out of the sight picture. We got a call on our walkie-talkie a few minutes later. It was kind of a stalemate. We just sat there in that stairwell, counting the minutes, and we were really hoping he didn't have another grenade. He probably thought we were dead, but he couldn't be too cautious. The guy was smarter than that. We got a call from Jeff, and he asked us if we were okay. We told him that we lost our friend, which I later found out his name was Barry Watson. Run-of-the-mill guy. He sold TVs at a Best Buy there in town. It's kind of sad you die without everybody knowing your name. A brother that was in combat with you, and he just blows up like that. But I can honestly say it's better off that it wasn't me and it was him instead of me. A lot of people would call me a selfish coward for saying something like that, but Then again, I like to think I paid my dues after being shot that many times. There's just something about being shot that makes you not want to get shot anymore. Now I can see what all the people that have been shot are talking about. I used to think, oh, it's not that bad. At least they get rewards and people can walk around saying that they have bragging rights, but quite frankly, it wasn't really worth it. Especially when you don't have a doctor wandering around to make sure that you don't get infected or don't get hurt. We saw in that stairwell for what felt like forever. Definitely gave me some time to pray and start to think about what I was going to do with my life. Jeff kept calling us and asking us if we needed assistance, but we needed him down there. If the sniper had paid no heed to us and thought we were dead, he'd probably have that gun trained on him, and he hadn't been firing in a bit, so we were almost sure that he was making sure that he would be dead if he tried anything. Things just started to get worse from there. The bleeding didn't stop on Orwell's face, so we had to patch him up. I used what I could, but it was definitely pretty gnarly to look at. I had to take some tweezers and pull out the rocks, and had to hold his mouth shut so he wouldn't make too much noise. We didn't want to blow our cover, if we even had cover. We weren't sure if this gunman was all the wise to us, or not. But I can guarantee you this. When I get my hands on him, he will die. And when I get my hands on him, and I kill him, I'm going to nail his hands to the ceiling and his feet to the ground, and I'm going to scalp that son of a gun. And I'll get all the satisfaction I could possibly want.